I want to tell you a little bit about my findings with OpenShift Enterprise. So here I have OpenShift Origin. It's not dissimilar to OpenShift Enterprise. The reason for running it locally is you can quickly spin up an environment and spawn containers that are relevant to what it is that you're doing, and you can hook it into your development environment. The goal of this exercise was to be able to deploy a Tibco BusinessWorks container application into our OpenShift Enterprise or OpenShift Origin environment. So as you can see here, I've got two windows. First one is I've got OpenShift Origin open, and it has two projects in it. When you originally log into OpenShift Origin, there are no projects. I created two, actually one from the UI and one from the command line. So if we do an OC login in the command line, we should be able to log in as developer. And you can see here that it also lists those two projects. So the purpose of this demo is I want to show you a little bit about the BusinessWorks application very, very briefly, followed by the CI/CD pipeline that was created. So with BusinessWorks, there is a lot of intricacies in terms of how you build and deploy that application. So I'm going to take you to my Jenkins environment. So I've deployed this Jenkins environment simply by navigating to my project, clicking add to project at the top of the screen and clicking browse catalog. And I've used an ephemeral version of Jenkins. So I don't have shared storage in this cluster yet. So if you browse to the catalog, click continuous integration and deployment, you can select the ephemeral version. And I went through that process to deploy Jenkins. So within my applications, you'll see that I've got a Jenkins environment set up, which is currently minimized, and there's just a single pod. And that's what this environment is. When you get that Jenkins environment, you're able to log in directly using OAuth. So there's OAuth integration between your OpenShift environment and the Jenkins environment. Once logged in, you can see here that I have a few different Maven projects set up. There's a BWCE Maven plugin build, a BWCE request response build, and install-tibco-runtime. They're the three. Forget about this one here. They're the three jobs that we really care about. In order to run the BusinessWorks application in a container, you need the Tibco runtime. So that's effectively a big JRE environment that's customized with all the Tibco runtime environment components. You also need to use this Maven build plugin, and this is custom for the BusinessWorks 6 environment. It adds the ability to run a bunch of Maven targets, which are required in order to build your enterprise application archive. And the final thing is we need a job which will actually go off and build the application. So that's what this one is here. So I'm not going to walk you through this installation or the Maven plugin build. You can go to the Confluence page to read more about those. So my goal is to show you what happens when you run a build here. So what's going to happen is if we quickly look at the configuration of this job, you'll see that I've hooked up my own personal application Git repository, and I've not configured it for polling, but ideally what we would do is we would poll SCM, or if this environment was accessible on the internet, have a webhook integration where GitHub would call my Jenkins environment to spawn a build of the BusinessWorks application. So it's a very simple setup here actually. Because the BusinessWorks application uses Maven, we can simply run a bunch of goals and options to go off and build. Now, to be honest, I say simple, but it's taken me a while to figure this out. The documentation isn't that awesome in terms of the Fabricate Maven plugin. However, I've gotten there, and I think some of these goals could be simplified in terms of the Maven goals. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you what happens when it runs. So when this runs, it's going to engage with a couple of different things. So it's obviously going to pull down the source code from the Git repository. Okay, and as you can see, now it's starting to build, it's doing a clean of this environment, so it's cleaning up any existing resources. It's going through now and building the application archive. Okay, you can see here now it's packaged up a binary file, which is this docker build tar file, and it's going to send that as an image stream up to OpenShift. So you can see here that this build has actually now started. Okay, so let's go to the OpenShift console, and now let's have a look at deployments. So we can see here that we've got a deployment happening. Okay. So now it seems like that application has actually been deployed. Let's have a look at our Jenkins environment. It says successful. Now, because this BusinessWorks environment is quite a heavy environment, if we descend into this application and we view the log, okay, we can see that the application is now starting to fire up. Let's have a look now at the pods. So what happened was we had an existing application that was running, and then that application container was replaced by this new one. So if we now look at this, you'll see that the pod level, that application is still starting up. My environment's a little bit slow. But you can see here that Jenkins is the one that has fired off this build and this pipeline effectively within OpenShift. Let's take a look at the overview screen while this thing is still coming up. So within the OpenShift environment, the overview screen, and it's actually quite handy, you can see what the source of the application was. It specifies the build. This is the build that actually generated the image, the Docker image that is being sourced and used for the purpose of running that application. And you also see that it generates an automated route, and that route can be used to navigate directly to the application once it's completed. You also see the last build. You can see that it was complete, and you can actually see the last few lines, the tail of the build log itself. All very helpful, and good news is, hey, you want to scale up to another pod, you can click up and down here and it should automatically scale. Do that in a second. Now let's check out that pod log again and see if our application has come up. And it looks like it has. So started the BusinessWorks application. So now what we're going to do is we're going to get back to the overview screen, and let's try and hit this application. So I'm just going to open this one in a new tab. Okay, so it's throwing a 500, but it's meant to actually. So the real way for us to do this properly is to visit to my workspace and I'm going to open up this HTML page. So all this does is it's going to make a call to download a web page. So if we click Get News from Wiki, it's going to be making a call. You can see here it's waiting for our site, and it's returned this Wiki News page, which is the whole point of this application. So there you have it. We've got an application that has been deployed, and if we use a CLI, we should also be able to see the logs in real time. Okay, so let's try and call that page again. We should be able to see the logs coming straight through. There you go, it's making a call and it's got some data back. So that's basically the demo. You can see here that that's an interesting way to invoke a pipeline in Jenkins via a Maven plugin, BusinessWorks Maven plugin. And there's so much other things in here. We invoked a build via the source to image function, but you can actually run Docker builds in here, and there's a couple of different other ways as well. Thanks for listening.